Chapter 1. A chance encounter. Lila Moretti adjusted the strap of her canvas bag as she walked down the quiet streets of the city. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of freshly baked bread, and the distant hum of traffic waking up. Her small flower shop had just received a large order, and she had promised herself she would deliver it promptly. Each bouquet she carried was arranged with care, the roses soft and velvety, their petals tinged with pink and cream. As she approached a grand estate at the edge of the city, a shiver ran down her spine. The wrought iron gates loomed tall and imposing, and the ivy climbing along the stone walls seemed to whisper secrets of old power and hidden lives. Lila hesitated for a moment, clutching the bouquet to her chest, her fingers brushing the soft petals as if seeking courage. She had heard rumors about the man who lived here, a figure both feared and respected in the city. People called him Alessandro Romano, a man whose name alone could silence a room. Lila was not usually one to be intimidated, but something about the estate made her heart race and her palms sweat. She stepped forward, lifting the wrought iron bell and pressing it gently. The echo of the bell rolled through the estate, sharp and commanding. She swallowed and shifted the bouquet, unsure of what to expect. The door opened almost instantly, revealing a man taller than she imagined, with dark hair falling in soft waves across his forehead. His eyes were a shade of brown, so deep that they seemed to hold secrets and storms within them. He studied her quietly for a moment, his gaze intense but not unkind. Lila felt a strange mix of fear and fascination coil in her chest, making her breath shallow. She forced a smile and held out the flowers, her voice soft yet steady. He took the bouquet, his fingers brushing hers ever so slightly, and in that fleeting touch, something unspoken passed between them. Alessandro nodded, his expression unreadable, but there was a subtle warmth in the corners of his eyes. Lila felt an unusual flutter in her stomach, a feeling she could not place, and quickly looked away, focusing on arranging the flowers neatly in the basket he had placed on a polished table. The room around her was luxurious, but not ostentatious. Rich leather furniture, polished wood, and muted tones gave it a timeless elegance. She could sense the quiet power in every detail, the way the space spoke of control, order, and careful attention. For a few moments, neither spoke. Lila felt the second stretch, the weight of his gaze lingering on her like a delicate pressure. Finally, Alessandro spoke, his voice calm, smooth, and commanding. He thanked her for the flowers and offered a polite nod before turning toward a doorway. Lila stepped back, her heart still racing, feeling the strange and magnetic pull of a man who should have terrified her, but instead left her mesmerized. She left the estate, walking down the street with a mind swirling with thoughts of him. Every detail of that encounter replayed in her mind, from the way his eyes had held hers to the subtle warmth in his touch. She knew, almost instinctively, that her life had just shifted in a way she could not yet understand, and that the man behind the gate, the feared and enigmatic Alessandro Romano, had left an indelible mark on her heart. The city carried on around her, indifferent to the stirring of her emotions, and yet Lila felt as if the world had grown infinitely larger and infinitely more dangerous in a single moment. She clutched the straps of her bag and whispered to herself that nothing about this day would ever feel ordinary again. Chapter 2. A dangerous. Lila Moretti could hardly concentrate on her day at the flower shop. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Alessandro Romano, the man whose presence had unsettled her in ways she could not explain. The memory of his intense gaze and the faint brush of his fingers against hers replayed over and over, leaving a strange mixture of thrill and anxiety curling in her stomach. She had convinced herself that the encounter was a one-time event, a fleeting moment that would fade with the day. But when a sleek black car pulled up outside her shop, her heart lurched with recognition. A chauffeur stepped out, polite and precise, and handed her a folded card with a single message in elegant script. It read that she was to visit the Romano estate for a discussion regarding a special order. The tone was courteous yet carried the weight of authority, leaving no room for refusal. Lila felt a shiver run down her spine. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to pretend that her ordinary life should not intersect with the dangerous world of the Romano family. And yet, another part of her, a more curious and daring part, could not resist the pull of the unknown. She adjusted her coat, took a deep breath, and stepped into the car. The drive through the winding roads to the estate was quiet, the chauffeur saying nothing, and Lila found herself studying the world outside, noticing the way the city gave way to carefully landscaped gardens and rolling lawns. When the car finally arrived, the massive gates opened silently, welcoming her into a realm she had only glimpsed once before. Alessandro was waiting in the grand hall, his posture commanding yet calm. The room was bathed in soft morning light, highlighting the refined elegance of the space and the quiet power it radiated. He regarded her with that same piercing gaze, and Lila felt her pulse quicken, despite herself. Alessandro spoke, his voice smooth and low, suggesting a simple business discussion. She tried to steady her breath and nod politely, but there was an unspoken tension in the air, a subtle current of something dangerous and magnetic between them. She could not help noticing the faint smile that tugged at the corners of his lips when he glanced at her, and for a moment, the room seemed suspended in quiet anticipation. As they moved to sit, Alessandro began to explain the order he wanted her help with, a project that seemed mundane on the surface, but hinted at the exquisite taste and meticulous attention to detail for which he was known. Lila listened carefully, her hands resting lightly in her lap, and could not deny the intrigue that grew with every word he spoke. The more she learned about the project, the more she realized that this visit was about more than flowers. It was about connection, about the subtle interplay of trust, power, and curiosity. There were moments when their eyes met, and Lila felt as if the rest of the world had faded. Alessandro's intensity was tempered with a rare softness, fleeting glimpses of a man who was not only commanding and feared, but capable of observing, understanding, and perhaps even feeling deeply. She felt drawn to him, despite the sense of danger that lingered like a shadow over the room. Every gesture, every careful word, seemed laden with significance, as if each moment had been designed to test boundaries and ignite a silent, growing tension. By the time Lila left the estate, her mind was a whirlwind of excitement and apprehension. She understood that stepping into Alessandro Romano's world came with unseen risks, and yet she could not deny the pull that kept her returning to the memory of his gaze. The way he had made her feel both seen and vulnerable in the same instant. The encounter left her with a heightened awareness of the fine line between fascination and danger, and she knew with a clarity that startled her that life, as she had known it, was shifting irrevocably. That evening, as she arranged the last bouquets in her shop, her thoughts lingered on Alessandro Romano, the man whose proposal had unsettled her and awakened something she could not yet name. She felt a strange thrill and a quiet fear, and in that delicate balance, she realized that she was standing at the edge of a world she could neither ignore nor fully control, and that her life had become entwined with a man whose power, presence, and mystery would change everything. Chapter 3. Forbidden's attraction. Lila Moretti could not stop thinking about Alessandro Romano. His presence lingered in her mind like a shadow, impossible to ignore. Every time she walked through the quiet streets of the city, she imagined his piercing gaze tracking her movements, calm yet commanding. The bouquets she arranged at her shop seemed dull in comparison to the memory of his intense eyes, the way his fingers had brushed hers when he had accepted the flowers, and the strange warmth that had settled in her chest during their brief moments together. She found herself distracted, spilling water on petals, misplacing ribbons, and smiling to herself at thoughts she could not fully explain. Alessandro, for his part, had not forgotten her either. He found excuses to visit her shop, claiming business inquiries, orders for rare flowers, or consultations that required her expertise. Every time she saw him, her pulse quickened, and a flurry of emotions, fear, curiosity, fascination made her hands tremble as she worked. There was a magnetic pull between them, subtle but undeniable, that neither dared to fully acknowledge. Their conversations were loaded with unspoken meaning, the brush of a hand over a bouquet, a lingering look that spoke more than words ever could. One afternoon, Lila found herself alone arranging a display of orchids when Alessandro entered. The sunlight streaming through the window cast golden highlights on his dark hair and the sharp lines of his face. He moved toward her with measured steps, and the air around them seemed to thrum with tension. Lila felt her breath catch as he leaned slightly closer, his voice low and smooth as he commented on the way she had placed the flowers. Every word felt intimate, like a private code only they understood, and yet there was danger in the intensity of his gaze. The attraction between them had grown into something neither could deny. Lila sensed it in the quickened beat of her heart when he approached, in the warmth of his eyes that lingered on her longer than was proper, in the way he seemed to notice every small detail about her. Alessandro, in turn, felt a pull toward her that was both thrilling and terrifying. She was ordinary in a way that made her beautiful to him, untainted by the harsh world he ruled. Her courage, her softness, and her quiet strength intrigued him, and he found himself thinking of her even when she was not near. Each encounter became a careful dance of restraint and desire. Alessandro tested boundaries, asking questions that seemed casual but carried hidden meaning, and Lila responded with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Their moments together were brief, stolen between errands or during fleeting visits, yet they left a lasting impact, sparking an intensity neither expected, but both secretly craved. The subtle touches, the way their hands almost met over a bouquet, and the fleeting smiles shared in passing began to weave a connection that went beyond simple fascination. Even as she felt drawn to him, Lila was aware of the danger. Alessandro's world was not one she fully understood, and the rumors of his power and influence were ever present in the back of her mind. Yet the fear only heightened the thrill, making the stolen glances and unspoken words feel even more potent. She found herself imagining the life they could have together, daring and impossible, yet undeniably alive with emotion. Every encounter left her heart racing, every smile a secret flame between them. By the end of the day, as Lila locked the shop and walked through the quiet streets toward home, she realized that her life had changed in ways she could not yet comprehend. Alessandro Romano was no longer just a man she had briefly met. He had become a presence in her mind and heart, an invisible thread pulling her toward a world she both feared and desired. The forbidden attraction between them grew stronger with each passing day, a delicate and dangerous fire that neither could ignore, and Lila knew with a mixture of excitement and trepidation that she was already falling, step by step, into the orbit of the man whose touch had left her both exhilarated and unsettled. Chapter 4. Secrets Unveiled. Lila Moretti had always believed her life was simple and predictable, built around the quiet routines of her flower shop and the comforting familiarity of her small apartment. But the more time she spent near Alessandro Romano, the more she realized that her ordinary world was colliding with a dangerous one she could barely comprehend. She had felt the pull between them, the growing tension that made her heart race and her thoughts scatter, but until now, she had not truly understood the risks she was stepping into. It began on a humid afternoon when Lila was delivering a small arrangement to a client in a quieter part of the city. She had taken a shortcut through a narrow alley, hoping to save time, when she heard muffled voices arguing. Curiosity pricked at her as she edged closer, her heart thudding in her chest. From around the corner, she saw a scene that made her stop cold. A group of men surrounded another man, their movements sharp and threatening. The man in the center looked cornered, desperate, but his composure carried an unmistakable authority. Lila's breath caught as she recognized him, one of Alessandro's trusted associates, and she could sense that this confrontation was more than a simple quarrel. Before she could move away, one of the men noticed her. Her instinct was to run, but fear rooted her to the spot as they turned their attention toward her. A firm hand grabbed her arm, spinning her out of the alley and into the back of a sleek black car. She barely had time to comprehend what was happening before the car sped away, leaving the scene behind. Inside, her heart pounded, but Alessandro's calm voice cut through the panic. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his eyes dark with a mixture of anger and concern. "You don't understand the world you've stepped into." Lila's hands trembled as she tried to catch her breath. She had only seen fragments of this world before, rumors, whispers, passing glances, but now she felt its weight pressing in around her. Alessandro explained, carefully, that the men she had seen were part of a rival faction, and that their power could bring devastation if not controlled. The calmness in his voice only made the reality sharper, the danger more immediate. Lila realized she had been teetering on the edge of a world she barely knew, drawn into its orbit by the very man whose presence both thrilled and frightened her. Even as fear settled in her chest, another emotion surged through her, an unexpected sense of admiration and loyalty. Alessandro had risked exposing himself to protect her, to ensure that she was not harmed by a world she had only glimpsed. She felt her heart tighten as she understood that the connection between them was no longer a simple attraction. It was entwined with trust, responsibility, and unspoken promises. Every glance he gave her, every subtle gesture, carried the weight of unspoken rules and silent protection. The following days were marked by tension and caution. Lila found herself more aware of her surroundings, noticing the subtle signs of danger she had previously ignored, the way strangers lingered too long, the glances exchanged in dark corners, the sudden hum of engines when she walked the streets. Alessandro remained close, offering a sense of security that was both comforting and suffocating in its intensity. Their stolen moments became rarer, yet each encounter burned brighter in her mind, a mixture of longing, fear, and a deepening connection that refused to be denied. Late one evening, as they walked through the estate gardens, Alessandro finally allowed a glimpse into the depths of his world. He spoke softly about the responsibilities he carried, the burdens of his position, and the constant threats that surrounded him. Lila listened, captivated not just by the danger, but by the man himself, the vulnerability hidden beneath layers of power, the desire for something real amidst the chaos. She realized that loving him would never be simple, yet the very impossibility made it all the more compelling. By the time she returned to her apartment, Lila felt a mixture of exhilaration and dread. Her world had shifted irrevocably. She understood now that Alessandro Romano's life was a dangerous one, filled with secrets that could never be fully shared. Yet her heart had already chosen to follow him into the shadows. Every beat of her heart, every breath she drew, carried the knowledge that this forbidden attraction had become something far deeper, something that could not be ignored, no matter the cost. Chapter 5. The first confession. Lila Moretti had grown accustomed to the magnetic pull Alessandro Romano exerted over her, but she had never expected the walls he kept around himself to crack so suddenly. It happened on an evening thick with the scent of roses and jasmine in the estate gardens. The air was warm, the sky painted in shades of gold and amber as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Lila had been arranging a small bouquet on a stone bench at the fountain when Alessandro appeared, silent and commanding as always. He leaned against the edge of the fountain, watching her with an intensity that made her hands tremble and her pulse race. For a long moment, they said nothing. The quiet was not uncomfortable, but charged, filled with the kind of tension that had been building over weeks of stolen glances, lingering touches, and conversations layered with hidden meaning. Lila felt a familiar shiver of anticipation mixed with unease. Finally, Alessandro spoke, his voice lower than usual, softer, and hesitant in a way she had never heard before. "You make it difficult to remain distant," he confessed, almost as if speaking to himself, his eyes never leaving hers. The words struck her, simple yet heavy with the weight of feeling he rarely revealed. Lila's breath caught. She had known there was an attraction, an undeniable connection, but hearing him speak of it, admitting that he too struggled against it, ignited something within her she could not contain. I don't know what to say," she whispered, feeling the heat of embarrassment and longing rise in her cheeks. She wanted to step closer, to bridge the space between them, yet she hesitated, aware of the danger and the forbidden nature of their connection, Alessandro took a slow step toward her, the movement deliberate, measured, as though he were testing the boundaries of propriety and desire. "I've lived a life of control," he said, his tone quiet, almost vulnerable. "Every decision, every action is calculated, yet you make me feel something I've never allowed myself to feel before. I cannot ignore it, and I cannot deny it." His words were a revelation, laying bare a part of him that few had ever glimpsed. A man who was usually untouchable yet now revealed a heart capable of longing, fear, and tenderness. Lila's chest tightened as she processed his confession. She had always sensed there was more to Alessandro than the aura of danger and authority he projected. But hearing him speak so openly stirred emotions that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She wanted to tell him that she felt the same, that the flutter in her heart and the ache in her chest were not illusions, yet words seemed inadequate, trembling on the tip of her tongue. Instead, she let her eyes meet his, conveying what her voice could not. By the time Lila returned to her own apartment, her heart was both light and heavy. Light because she had touched a depth of emotion she had never known possible, and heavy because she knew that outside these stolen moments, danger still lurked. Yet she also understood that the love they shared, quiet and secret though it might be, was worth every risk. It was a love that defied circumstance, that flourished despite threats, and that promised a connection deeper than either of them had ever imagined. Each stolen night reaffirmed the truth she had begun to accept, that in Alessandro Romano's world of shadows and danger, their love was a fragile flame that refused to be extinguished. Chapter 8. The ultimate tension in Alessandro Romano's world had always been palpable, but that evening it descended upon him, a suffocating storm. Lila Moretti had returned from a quiet delivery, her mind still lingering on the stolen moments she and Alessandro had shared in the library just nights before, when a summons arrived. It was brief, formal, and carried a weight that left her heart sinking before she even read it. Alessandro's family, the pillars of the empire he had inherited and maintained with iron precision, demanded a meeting. Their message was clear. The romance he harbored with her could not continue. They feared for her safety, they feared distraction, and they feared the unpredictable consequences of his desire. Alessandro's face was unreadable when he spoke to her about it later, but Lila saw the storm behind his eyes. He was torn, caught between the duty he owed to his family and the undeniable pull he felt toward her. "They say it's dangerous for you to be near me," he admitted quietly, sitting across from her in the quiet of his private study. His fingers rested on the polished wood of the desk, a rare moment of stillness, and yet every line of his body spoke of the conflict raging within. Lila could see the weight of generations pressing down on him, the obligations and expectations that he could never fully escape. Lila's chest ached. She had known from the beginning that being close to Alessandro was dangerous, that his life was shadowed by power struggles and rivalries, yet the thought of being told to step away, of being forced to leave him, was unbearable. She reached for his hand, a gesture of both comfort and defiance. "I don't care about the dangers," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm not leaving, not because I'm reckless, but because I believe in us, and I believe in you." Alessandro's eyes softened, but the tension did not fully leave his shoulders. He leaned closer, his forehead resting briefly against hers, and whispered words that made her heart seize. "You don't understand the world I live in. My life is not yours to share freely. Every choice I make for you could place you in harm's way. I cannot promise you safety, Lila." And yet, his voice faltered, betraying the vulnerability he usually kept buried. "I cannot imagine my life without you in it." The days that followed were filled with a fragile dance between closeness and restraint. Alessandro moved through the estate with a careful awareness, every interaction with Lila tinged with the unspoken understanding of what was at stake. She felt the tension in his gaze, the hesitation in his touches, and yet she also felt the undeniable force of their connection. Each moment together became a delicate balancing act, charged with emotion, longing, and the ever-present shadow of the ultimatum. Lila wrestled with her own fears. She had always known love could be difficult, but the stakes now felt monumental. The warnings, the pressure from Alessandro's family, and the constant threat from rival factions all loomed over her like dark clouds. And yet, in spite of it, she could not deny the depth of her feelings, nor could she ignore the pull that had drawn her to him from the very beginning. Her courage, fueled by the love she felt, gave her a clarity she had never known. She would not step away from him, no matter the consequences. One evening, as they walked together in the estate gardens, Alessandro finally allowed a rare moment of emotional vulnerability. He spoke of the weight of his responsibilities, the impossible choices he faced, and the unbearable thought of losing her. Lila listened, holding his hand tightly, her own resolve mirrored in the gentle squeeze she gave him. Their bond was being tested in ways they could not fully control, and yet the very intensity of the pressure brought them closer. They realized that love, in its truest form, was never without sacrifice, fear, or challenge. By the end of that night, the ultimatum had not broken them. Instead, it crystallized the depth of their connection. Alessandro knew that every day spent with Lila was a risk, yet he also understood that their love was worth every threat, every whispered warning, and every perilous choice. And Lila, standing close to him under the moonlit sky, felt the certainty that they would face whatever came together, bound not just by passion, but by trust, courage, and a love that refused to bend to fear. Chapter 9. Risking everything. The morning air was heavy with tension as Lila Moretti stepped out into the quiet streets, her mind racing with thoughts of Alessandro Romano and the dangers that had been closing in around them. The ultimatum from his family had only intensified the stakes, and every moment spent together now carried the weight of potential disaster. Yet neither of them could turn away from the bond that had grown too strong, too urgent to ignore. Their love had become a tether in a world of chaos, and the pull of it was irresistible. Alessandro moved with deliberate precision as he orchestrated a plan to eliminate the looming threat from the rival faction. Every call he made, every arrangement he set in motion, was calculated to protect not just his empire, but Lila, the woman who had become the center of his heart. He knew the danger was real, that one misstep could cost them everything, yet the thought of her in harm's way was unbearable. Lila, sensing the weight of his actions, made her own quiet decisions. She refused to be a passive bystander, insisting on helping where she could, using her insight, her resourcefulness, and her courage to aid him in subtle yet meaningful ways. Their nights were long and filled with whispered strategies, hurried glances, and the constant awareness that the enemy was watching, waiting for any sign of weakness. Despite the fear, there were moments when their hands found each other, their eyes met with unspoken reassurance, and the love that had flourished in stolen hours now became a lifeline. Alessandro's strength, always so imposing, softened in her presence, revealing the vulnerability and determination that fueled his every decision. Lila, in turn, discovered depths of bravery she had not known she possessed. Realizing that their love demanded courage as much as passion, the confrontation with the rival faction came suddenly, swift and dangerous, leaving little room for hesitation. Alessandro acted with calculated force, his movements precise and unyielding as he neutralized the threat, protecting both his empire and the woman he loved. Lila, close at his side, felt the adrenaline surge through her veins, fear mingling with exhilaration as they navigated the chaos together. In that crucible of danger, their trust in each other became absolute, unspoken and unwavering, a bond forged not only through desire, but through survival. When the danger finally subsided and the rival faction had been dismantled, the quiet that returned was profound. Lila and Alessandro stood together in the aftermath, breathing heavily, hearts pounding, yet profoundly aware that they had emerged stronger. The world around them, once threatening and unpredictable, now seemed to hold a fragile sense of peace. Their shared ordeal had proven something neither had fully acknowledged before, that their love was not fragile, but fierce, capable of enduring trials that would have broken lesser bonds. That night, in the private sanctuary of the estate, they allowed themselves to linger in each other's arms, no longer cautious, no longer hiding. Words were few, unnecessary in the presence of the intimacy they had earned through fire and fear. Alessandro held Lila close, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat against his chest, and she rested against him, safe and certain in a way that had been impossible just weeks ago. The danger had not ended entirely, and the shadows of his world would always loom. But in that moment, the two of them were untouchable, united in love, trust, and shared courage. By dawn, Lila understood that risk had become inseparable from love. To stand with Alessandro was to accept peril, yet to walk away was impossible. Their bond had been tempered in the fires of danger, and it was now unbreakable. In the quiet glow of the morning light, she felt the profound truth that had guided them through every trial. Love, when strong and steadfast, could conquer even the darkest threats, and together, they could face whatever the world dared to throw at them. Chapter 10. Love in the Light City felt different that morning, bathed in sunlight that sparkled off glass and stone, warm and promising. Lila Moretti stepped out into the streets, her heart lighter than it had been in months, carrying with her the quiet confidence of someone who had survived danger and emerged stronger. The world she had once navigated with caution and trepidation now seemed expansive, alive, and filled with possibility. Alessandro Romano was by her side, walking with a rare ease. The tension that had shadowed him finally softened into something approachable, something human. The rival threat that had haunted their lives for so long was gone, dismantled by Alessandro's careful planning and their shared courage. Yet even more than the safety, it was the liberation from fear that defined this morning. Lila looked at Alessandro, noting the subtle changes in him, the way his eyes softened when he laughed, the warmth that no longer felt fleeting but permanent. There was no need for secrecy now, no need for stolen moments in shadowed corners. Their love could exist openly, fully, without compromise. As they walked through the estate gardens, Alessandro paused beneath a flowering tree, the blossoms falling gently around them. He took Lila's hands in his gaze steady and full of emotion. "We've come so far," he said, his voice low but rich with feeling. "Through danger, through fear, through everything, we've held on to each other. I don't ever want to let go." Lila felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, a mixture of relief, joy, and overwhelming love. She squeezed his hands, grounding herself in the present, in the reality that this man, once untouchable and dangerous, was now hers in every sense that mattered. Their love, born in secrecy and nurtured through trials, had transformed into a force both tender and unshakable. Every laugh, every glance, every gentle touch was a testament to the path they had taken together. Lila felt a sense of peace she had never known before, the kind of peace that comes not from the absence of challenges, but from knowing that someone stands beside you through all of them. Alessandro, too, felt the weight lift from his shoulders, replaced by the profound satisfaction of finally embracing a love he had thought impossible in his world of power and shadows. In the days that followed, their lives began to settle into a rhythm neither had anticipated, but both cherished. Mornings were spent together in the quiet light of the estate, afternoons arranging flowers and planning small joys, and evenings filled with laughter, conversation, and the intimacy of shared lives, no longer threatened by constant peril. The bond that had been tested by fire and danger now flourished openly, growing stronger with each passing moment. Lila knew that the world of the mafia, of power and danger, would never fully disappear from their lives. Yet the love they shared had become a sanctuary, a force that could withstand threats, rivalry, and uncertainty. Standing together beneath the clear sky, Alessandro whispered words she would carry in her heart forever. "We are ours, Lila. Nothing can take this from us." And in that instant, surrounded by the light of a new day, she believed him completely. The journey from forbidden attraction to open love had been perilous, filled with moments that tested their courage, hearts, and trust. But they had endured, grown, and emerged stronger. Alessandro Romano and Lila Moretti, once bound by secrecy and danger, now embraced a life of warmth, tenderness, and unwavering devotion. Even in a world shadowed by darkness, they had found each other and built a love that shone brilliantly, unafraid and unhidden, proving that hearts could find light, even in the deepest shadows.